It's been a long time since I've actually used the camera app in a while. Hello, everyone. I thought it's been a while since I've done an actual discussion sort of thing, or an actual episode on a community or something strange. So today I want to talk about a up-and-coming sort of fan base. It's called YANGGANG. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. I actually got the idea from a guy who commented on my foreskin video. He just typed in YANGGANG. And of course I've been hearing about YANGGANG for a while now. A lot of kids around me at school, sometimes they'll say it. Of course I heard of it before that. I remember watching some InfoWars episode on why YANGGANG is bad. And you know, I've seen some of Andrew Yang's stuff on his website. So I thought, why not just make an episode all about YANGGANG? Or more specifically, why people would want to support Andrew Yang, especially like ex-MAGA and conservatives, even though he's a Democrat and a lot of his ideas are pretty Democrat. So, a little background on Andrew Yang. He is the son of two Taiwanese immigrants, and apparently his dad had a lot of patents. I'm getting this from his interview with Ben Shapiro. And basically, he went through a lot of job failings, and eventually he became the head of an education company. And during the financial crisis, he quit. I think it was the housing bubble, yeah. He quit, and then he started another company, Ventures for America, which is like a private charity, I think, and he started creating jobs for people. But around this time, he realized that funneling money to people isn't going to help them. In fact, there's a bigger problem with the system in general. So, a lot of his propositions are that we basically give $1,000 to everyone as a universal basic income, sort of. He calls it a freedom dividend. Now, regardless of what you think about it, he's offered a solution, right? You may not think it's the best solution, you may think it is, but again, we're solely focusing on why he has such a big community. Now, that's all great, right? Andrew Yang is, I mean, you know, he comes from a hardworking background, and he doesn't have, and you know, he started a charity, which is all great. So, he is running as a Democrat, and his main pitch is helping people get relocated before the next big industrial revolution, which is going to take place with automation. So logically, that does make sense, because automation is going to drive out a lot of jobs we have now. He really likes the example of truck drivers, and he uses them a lot as an analogy. So he wants to help Americans relocate and get into new job fields as automation takes over, because he thinks that we're gonna, and this is just common sense, right? If you get a new field, right? If you introduce something new into the economy, you're gonna get a bunch of new jobs that you probably haven't ever thought could have existed before. And because of that, he's trying to think like way long term, right? And so right now he's trying to give everyone $1,000 so that basic living expenses can be covered, but then you can go on and like you can go and search for a new job. Now, a lot of people criticize this UBI thing, right? Because universal basic income, people compare it to like welfare. It's an extension of Social Security, essentially. So, like, the whole thing is that you're not giving anyone an incentive to work. But Mr. Yang actually has a different approach to that. He thinks $1,000 a month is enough to add up to $12,000 a year, but that's still under the poverty line, because at minimum, if you're in poverty, you're living on 12,700 something, right? That's what he says in the interview. So if it's just underneath that poverty line, you can still have enough money to cover your living expenses, but not enough to fully set your life. So you need to go out and look for work. So clearly, a lot of his ideas are about helping relocate workers, and this was all as a response to, kind of the whole threat of jobs being taken. We saw Trump get elected 2016 because people they wanted more jobs, right? But Trump's basic idea was it's the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, that are taking jobs from us, so we need to limit that. But Andrew Yang is saying it's not necessarily illegal immigrants that are doing it, it's this new wave of automation. So, but what's interesting is he's not trying to limit automation. In fact, he's pushing for automation because it's what's going to advance our country in America. But what he wants is that we evolve with automation. So his general mindset, and this is where his fan base comes into play, right? His general mindset is that we shouldn't try and regulate something. He's trying to use the government for not regulation, which it's usually used for and is pretty good at. He's trying to use it to build something positive. And a lot of his problems with what he says this universal basic income stuff is going to do, his freedom dividend, this is just something that I found interesting, is he says universal basic income is going to have a positive intent behind it, because right now with welfare programs and a lot of government subsidies and stuff that you give out to people, it's not started with a great intent, because you're giving money with the idea that there's something wrong with you and you need to get out of it. That's why you see a lot of people that are on welfare, after they're out of welfare, they feel ashamed of the time they were on welfare, because it feels like you're taking other people's money for this and that. And he says that's why a lot of people are still on welfare. But he wants to give everyone $1,000, which won't make you ashamed. He's just saying, here's the $1,000. We don't care what you use it for. We just need you to get back to work. His whole campaign in general, it's not very negative. He's not attacking any other candidates based on what they think, and he's not trying to use the government to restrict, essentially. He's trying to use it to build up. The freedom dividend, it may work, it may not, but he's doing it on the basic assumption that people are good. And now, I used to think this way too, but I mean, no one, I used to think that not everyone is great, right? People are generally not that great. But this idea, if you treat someone like they actually matter, or if you give value to them, they might reciprocate, and they might actually get to work. So his basic push of positivity in terms of giving money for people to start their new jobs it's actually kind of interesting. And frankly, I think that's why a lot of people on the Democrat side, and actually a lot of people from the Trump side, because also the Trump side, everyone that was a Trump supporter, right, or anyone on the conservative side, they also want people to have jobs. That's what not many people understand, is that Democrats and Republicans alike, they both want jobs for people, right? But they just disagree on how to give people more jobs. He's offering solutions to problems, and he's not attacking other people's platforms. I think I've said this already a lot, but if you really let that sink in, I haven't heard him criticize any other candidates till date, like with any bad intent. For example, he said something during the Ben Shapiro interview about Trump, but he didn't say that Trump's campaign was terrible. He just said that maybe the efforts were misplaced a little bit, right? Like, it's not immigration that's the cause of job loss, it's automation. And that also, he supports a lot of what he says with facts, which is what we've, as a public, been pushing for with politics nowadays, is you support it with facts. So that's what he's been doing. And the more and more he gives out, the more his policy seems pretty good. regardless of what you think of it. I'm not talking about if his policies will work. I'm just talking about why Andrew Yang is seen as someone that both conservatives and Democrats can get behind. It's because he doesn't criticize, he doesn't put down anyone else's platform. He builds his own up. And it's very obvious when you're talking to this guy, right? Okay, first of all, I just want to point out, he went on to Ben Shapiro's show, right? The Daily Wire. No other Democrat has done that to date. He's like the only Democrat that's ever been on that show. If you think of it like that, this guy's trying to bridge people. I mean, he's trying to bridge two polarized ends of the spectrum. He's trying to get Democrats and Republicans on his side. Moderates already like this guy. I mean, even though his policies may not be the best, at least he's trying to get everyone on behind him, right? He's not discriminating against any particular group. He hasn't made any push towards any particular group, and his campaign is very open. Anyone can get behind it, really. And here's the thing, his main push is that we evolve with automation. He's not against automation either, so anyone in the automation industry, he's not excluding them from his campaign either. So you see, it's really easy to get behind his campaign, which is pretty genius, actually. Also, the freedom dividend idea, he's trying to also pay people who do jobs that may not have a market value. Like for some artists, for example, if you're an artist, what you're doing for work might be, improving society or something like that, right? But you're not getting paid for it. But essentially the government is paying you for your work below the poverty line, but they're still paying for it. Or if you're like a stay-at-home parent, you're being paid essentially every month $1,000 for taking care of your children. So that's another way to look at this freedom dividend. And, he also likes to use Alaska as an example of why his, this universal basic income is a good idea. It's because Alaska also has something like a freedom dividend going on that was passed by Republicans, so that's another reason he's trying to use it, is because it was passed by the party whose ideals don't usually agree with it. And also everyone in Alaska likes their universal basic income policy, so that's another thing. So now, let's get behind why a lot of ex-MAGA people like what Andrew Yang is doing. Well, you see, I've said this before, but it was all in response to jobs, and not just jobs, but an attitude in general, because you see, in the United States, our main attitude towards Caucasian white males, right? It's not very great. We criticize them for no reason of their own, right? On one hand, you say racism doesn't exist, but now it's in reverse. So anyway, it's pretty obvious, for example, that the media does not like whites. So with all this like anti majority sentiment, it's why people voted for Trump. It's because this guy was probably one of the only candidates that just, he said, it's not your fault that you're white. We need a government that doesn't, discriminate solely on your skin color. And the funny thing is, say what you want about the guy, but he generally did not have a racist campaign. Like, say what you want about him, but sure, he didn't like illegal immigrants, but that's not racism. Illegal immigrants can come from anywhere, right? Or, okay, I'm getting too much into Trump, right? But basically, people voted for him because he was one of the only candidates that just didn't care about race, honestly. So, when you look at Andrew Yang, for example, yeah, he's an Asian immigrant, and you'd expect him to use that as some sort of campaign strategy, but he didn't use that much as a campaign strategy. If anything, he said, you know, it's great that I am, but that's not my main campaign focus. His main campaign focus is giving jobs. So that's one of the reasons that ex-MAGA, right? Ex-MAGA members saw, oh look, we have another guy that doesn't care about race. In fact, I asked this question on the not the Andrew Yang, yeah, the Yang subreddit, Yang for President. So for those who clicked, thank you. If this question was asked before, please provide links to the thread. I thank you in advance. I wonder what makes Mr. Yang's campaign palatable to conservatives, especially with a concept such as UBI involved in the mix. Doesn't an extension of Social Security bother conservatives as an extension of New Deal ideals? If you are ex-MAGA, was there anything specific about Mr. Yang or his campaign that made you truly feel that he is best to run, even in opposition to Trump? Although ex-MAGA means you don't support the president anymore, so sorry on that misconception. Also, have you found any of Mr. Yang's ideals to support traditional economic or social conservative ideas? If yes, how so? I'm just curious, and I thought, who better to ask than supporters? Plus, you can't really rely on media these days. Thank you. So I got, thankfully, because I'm not big on Reddit or anything, so I'm just an average Redditor. So, you know, I thought this question wasn't going to get much responses, but I thankfully did get one. And this was, what was this, YANGGANG? Oh, this was on YANGGANG. Interesting. Oh, because they have more people, yeah. So, one fellow new sorter decided, hey, I'm going to respond to it. And, of course, he's only speaking for himself. He literally said this right here. I can only speak for myself. In my honest opinion, most of the other Democrats are racist towards white people, and Andrew Yang isn't. Many Trump supporters, and even conservatives, are open and liberally minded people, but are tired of being criticized for things that they didn't do because of their skin color. So again, yeah, the fundamental thing is he doesn't care about race. That's one of the reasons that everyone, like a lot of people can get behind him, because his campaign doesn't discriminate and he doesn't discriminate. If you think that your identity is what makes you important, if you think that your identity is what is important, then I do not like you. Yang has stated clearly that being Asian is an important part of his campaign. Helping Americans is the important part. For most other candidates, it's important to them that a member of X identity is running. That is pure racism in my opinion. Identity politics is racism. The left is radicalizing the minds of our society and even propelling the alt-right. They like it too, because the more scary the boogeyman of the alt-right is, the better they look as they fight it. So I think subconsciously they want everyone to be racist towards each other. Nothing about other left-wing candidates make me think that they genuinely want to help people get along with each other. This is why he's palatable to conservatives, because they can sense that he's trying to help them, while other candidates are portraying conservatives as the great Satan. Why would I vote for someone who finds glory in defeating me? So to answer your question, while I do not like the left, I do like Yang because he is genuinely trying to help people. I believe no other candidate for president, including Trump, is genuinely trying to help all people, except for Tulsi Gabbard, but I prefer Yang's policies and vision for the future.
Hey everyone, this is just something that I found after recording the video. Another guy responded to my initial question that I asked in the YANGGANG subreddit, and this is his response. He says, I voted for Trump, and my number one priority when voting for a president is voting for someone who can appeal to both parties. I've always been a moderate. Trump isn't the most unifying guy of all time, but as someone who lives in the Rust Belt, I did see a lot of Democrats supporting Trump. That's the main reason I voted for him. He is anti-interventionist and unifies people that a normal Republican could not. I think that both Republicans and Democrats have good ideas, and I wasn't really against any of Trump's policies. I think that the news intentionally manipulated what he said to make him look bad, which made me constantly defend him. I did a lot of Trump defending, but in reality, I think both Trump and Clinton would be fine presidents. The basket of deplorables think thing really rubbed me the wrong way, since I wanted a candidate that could appeal to both parties. So now, you may ask why I support Yang. He is anti-war and unifies people of all types. Okay. His ideas on UBI are not traditional ideas, yeah, that's for sure. And after reading into them, I have decided that UBI is a necessity for the future of America. Okay. He wants to help everyone. I started the 2016 election cycle supporting Bernie and generally like the idea of helping poor people, but Yang's plan is one of the only plans I've heard that will help the middle and the poor classes. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Bernie's job guarantee wouldn't do that, and his supporters get angry when you ask about how the economy would be affected. 4. He has a history of helping Americas with, his company. This is something I didn't mention during the actual video. It's called Venture for America. It's like the charity thing. And after reading his first book, I could see his ideas kind of become what they are now. It's amazing to be able to understand how someone comes to conclusions like that and makes him infinitely more likable. Oh, okay, so there's another thing. He published a book when he was in his actual company, so you can see an evolution of his thought process in his book. So that kind of makes it makes the process of like voting for him a little more transparent, and you feel like you're actually along with him while he's making his conclusions. So it's kind of like a populist appeal. Okay. The memes are good. It is important. The only reason I learned about Yang at all is the free $1,000 memes. Oh yeah, that's for sure. There's not much media coverage on the guy as well. Not as much as you get for like the other candidates like Pete, whatever his name is, Pete Buttgeg. Like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna revert back to a second grader, but that's gay. That's like the gayest name I've ever heard. Funny thing is, he's actually gay. So I looked into him, and here we are now. He doesn't brand himself as a socialist. It is decently important, because that's one of the key tenets of socialism is class warfare. That's no good in my eyes. His policies basically match how I feel about a lot of issues. I think abortion is bad, and alternatives should be encouraged, but I don't think it should be illegal. His policy page lays out a plan very similar to that. I believe all guns should be legal with proper training, and that matches with Yang's plan. The idea of reimbursing people for buying gun safety items, like gun safes, is a good idea. I can't believe that it hasn't been proposed before. Yang doesn't see the world as evil. He thinks things like global warming and automation are incoming threats, but he never points the finger and says that guy did it. It would be so easy for Yang to call Bezos evil, but he always avoids it and only occasionally jokes about things like that. Hope my novel didn't bore you too much, and a lot of Trump supporters, especially from around where I live, are former Democrats. When other Democrats say that Trump won because of racism, it only alienates them farther away. Yang is the only candidate who understands why Trump won, which is why I think he's the only candidate that has any shot of beating Trump in the general election. Every other candidate, including Trump, will only continue to push away moderates from politics. Yang is the only candidate who even deserves to be considered for me. Alright, that's a very thoughtful response, and a lot of these tenets I think I went over. Like number 3 and number... let's see. Okay, number 7 I didn't mention. Number 8, I think I mentioned his positive outlook. Number 5 is kind of what the whole Yang Gang is about. He has a history of helping Americans with Passion for America. I did mention that he started a charity, but, you know, I didn't really elaborate on it. So, yeah. If you guys didn't want some more reasons, I would say this here. He's anti-war. UBI is definitely unconventional, so that's one thing, you know. So, this is more of one of his fundamental beliefs as well. It's human-centered capitalism. And these are the 3 tenets down here. 1. Humans are more important than money. 2. The unit of human capitalism economy is each person, not each dollar. 3. Market exists to serve our common goals and values. So those are his 3 things that he wants to, you know, put in office, basically. And he doesn't outright blast capitalism, not like many Democrats do nowadays. Basically, he just says that it works, but it also doesn't work sometimes, and we need to reform our economy based off of this new form of capitalism that he's trying to create.
The Yang Gang is basically just memes. Yeah, it's memes that support him. Now, if you just look at them, right, a lot of them don't really say much about his campaign, so you have to go and do research on your own. But, again, the whole Yang Gang, that's their thing. Like, they don't want you to just read one meme and understand that as his campaign. They want you to go ahead and do research on it, too. He's one of these genuine candidates that you don't get to see very often. And I mean, at this stage, and from what he's saying, I don't think, me personally, no, this is just my opinion, but I don't think he has any ulterior motive, right? I mean, he just seems like a genuinely good candidate. That's all. Regardless of what you think of his policies, he just seems like someone who's trying to get something done. And that's why he has so many supporters. MAGA, leftists, doesn't matter. But they all can get behind this guy because he has something that he wants to achieve. So yeah, if you liked this, I guess, little excerpt on the Yang Gang, thank you for watching, and hopefully I can find something as interesting as this. I really did enjoy researching about it, and, you know, hopefully I'll find some other stuff on him, and maybe I can add on to this. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. The sources for this video were, of course, the Ben Shapiro interview with Andrew Yang from the Daily Wire, YANGGANG's own not Yang Gang, Andrew Yang's own website, and Reddit, the Yang Gang subreddit. So thank you all for watching, and check out Yang Gang for yourself.